let me give you a story about that. We're flying down to the coast. Weather's always crappy out there, right? And I had everybody that I cared about was in that airplane. Tara, the girls, the dog, everybody that was in that airplane. So this was, nothing to be taken lightly for me, right? This isn't just, I'm going to go hop around the pattern. And the weather was not as good as I wanted it to be. And I was, like, do I go IFR? But if I go IFR, I'm going to have to figure out how to come out of the clouds because there's no approach out there and all this other kind of stuff. And so that was running through my mind as I was coming down. I also had everybody here all at one time, right? And they're used to me just coming down to the airplane, doing a pre-flight, hopping in, and away we go. And today the weather was bad. Or that day the weather was bad. And that was causing me to do a lot more than they would normally be used to seeing me do. Kids were also 8 and 6, right? So, and they're all excited to go wherever we're going to go. And Tara's trying to wrangle them, and I've got them, just kind of where they're at. But in the meantime, my plan was just head down there, pre-flight. I'm not going to have to file a flight plan, other than a VFR flight plan, and we're just going to blast off. Now, all of a sudden, I got all this other stuff to think about. So now I've got to really check the weather. I got to really try and find out what the weather's like over on the coast with no weather reporting, right? And decide, am I going to really try to fly IFR? Am I going to be able to scud around underneath it? How is this going to work for me? I'm not feeling unsafe in terms of the flight, and if it would have been by myself, no big deal. But, like I said, I've got the added stress of literally everybody that I care about is on that airplane. Then, I also needed to pre-flight the airplane, right? And as I'm pre-flighting the airplane, it's now taking longer than it was supposed to take. Everybody is getting antsy, like, why aren't we going? The kids are running around, and I'm trying to pre-flight, and I'm trying to grab everybody's stuff, and I'm trying to load the airplane up with all our gear, and the dog's running all over the place, and I'm still trying to look at weather, and because it's changing minute by minute, and I keep coming back to it, and I'm not focused on any one thing, and I'm just, I'm losing my mind. I can feel it. And my 8-year-old comes up to me as I'm walking in between the airplane and the computer to go and check one more time the weather. My 8-year-old comes up to me and says, Dad, I need you to do something. Who knows? I have no idea what she asked. And I said to her, I said this to an 8-year-old. Madeline, I need you to figure out your own life right now. And I walk out, right? Not even thinking about what I had just said. Because it was just so this is what I need to do, and I'm trying to keep you safe, and da-da-da, right? And I could have said all that stuff. Probably would have slowed me down, right? So I said that, and then I come back, and I'm going back out to the airplane. And Tara says, can I talk to you for a second real quick? And I go, yeah, sure, what do you, yeah. What else does somebody need from me, right? That's the way I'm thinking. And she says, so you told an 8-year-old that she needs to figure out her own life. And that's really not the message we want to give an 8-year-old, because an 8-year-old doesn't have to figure out her own life. That's our job. Help her figure out her life. So I understand where you're at, and I understand you're trying to keep us safe, and I understand that all these things are true. And maybe what we should do is maybe we should go to McDonald's and grab some food, and maybe we can just do that for you. And why don't you tell me what time we should come back at? And at that moment, I thought to myself, number one, what an ass, right? Of course. And number two, how come I didn't think of that? Why wasn't that something that I had thought about? Because that was easily a piece of this that I could have taken out and said, why don't you guys, you know what, today's going to be a weird day because the weather is different than I thought it was going to be and all this kind of stuff. Why don't you guys come down in an hour? Why don't you just drop me off at BEFA and you guys go and grab some food for the flight, or whatever the case may be, right? And you go to the park and run around, something. And that would have taken the stress of me having to worry about what they were all doing in here out of the situation, and I could have focused purely on the flying aspect of it, which is really where I should have been in the first place. That was a moment of extreme task saturation, and I wasn't getting anything done well. I was getting everything done pretty crappy. And as soon as they left, I was able to say, all right, great. Now I'm going to pre-flight the airplane. I don't have to worry about a kid running out onto the ramp. All right, great. Now I'm going to take a look at the weather. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to file an IFR flight plan. I don't think I'm going to open it, though. I'll see what happens in midair. And as soon as I had that little piece taken off, right, as soon as I was no longer right up to here, and I had just moved it even down a quarter of a cup, all of a sudden I was able to say, oh, okay, great. Now I can start taking these pieces apart, chewing them into, small digestible pieces, and moving on to the next task. But I couldn't do it while I was saturated. And it was something real simple, but impossible for me to see. And it took somebody else to tell me, hey, I don't know what you're doing, man, but it ain't working, right? And so that's a good lesson from two parts. Number one, I should have been able to see that myself. I've been doing this game long enough to know that was a bad idea. And if I'd have watched anybody else doing it, I'd have said, hey, man, maybe this is an idea you can use. But the other good part about that did happen in that was that I was also able to listen, right? I was able to hear somebody who never been a pilot, never flown an airplane, right? None of those kinds of things, but she could see that I was here, right? She was watching everything spill over the sides and going, this ain't working, man, right? And at least I was able to hear it and listen to it, right? I was able to take that criticism and say, yeah, this isn't working, right? I didn't let at that point, I finally got off my ego trip of I have to be the best at everything. And I came down and said, yeah, you know what, this is too much for me to handle. You're right. It's time for me to delegate some authority here. And so that's a really good, at least for me, it was a fantastic example of what task saturation can do before you're ever even in an airplane. Would I have made bad choices? I don't know. But I certainly was on the path. Easily. Yeah. Could see myself on that path of making some pretty poor choices. And as soon as I was no longer task saturated, as soon as I could see more clearly, it was way more easy to understand what the weather was telling me. It was way easier to pre-flight that airplane and not be worried about what the weather was. It was way easier to decide, how am I going to get over there? And we ended up having a really nice and safe flight. Interestingly enough, that exact same trip, on the way back home, the weather turned to crap in South Bend out there. Again, had I been by myself, or better yet, with another pilot, we'd have taken off out of there and just figured it out. But I had already had that experience, right? Just a couple days prior. And I looked at the weather and I said, you know what? I'm not going through this again. And from here, I have far less resources than I have in Renton, right?
Yeah.
I don't have controllers. I don't have approaches. I don't have computers to, take a look at all the weather and all that kind of stuff. I'm roughing it out here in the piloting world, as it were. And I just didn't even go down to the airport. It wasn't worth it because I knew I wasn't. Just why am I going to risk this? What am I gaining out of it? A quicker trip back to Seattle. So we sat there for a couple days. And whatever. It was just one of those things. And was it inconvenient? Yeah. It was inconvenient. It was really inconvenient. In fact, I ended up having to drive her dad's car back to Seattle, drop everybody off, and I came back the next day and got the airplane and flew home. So...
You lived to
guess
tell
what? Yeah. Airplane still works. My family's still alive. And I get to tell you a story about, a really experienced IFR pilot choosing to not fly IFR because he just didn't feel like it was safe enough. And like I said, had I been with another instrument instructor, well, we'd have taken off and I wouldn't even have thought twice about it. It wouldn't have been a big deal. If I'd have been by myself, I still probably would have gone. But with my whole family, I just knew that I was too high. I was too high on that, and I was going to be worried about it the whole entire time, and that just wasn't the way to fly.
And being worried about it also raises...
Exactly, yeah, right? It just puts another layer on top of that. And I knew that regardless of what happened, that takeoff was going to put me at task saturation. I knew that that's where it was going to be, right? I could see the line, and I knew I was going to walk up to the line. I had no doubt that that's where I was headed. I didn't need to take another step to see if the line was really where the line was. I already knew it was there, right? I knew it was there. And so I was comfortable walking up to it, but I sure as hell wasn't comfortable taking another step. And that's what having everybody on board was doing to me. Was I was already at the line. Now to take off was that next step. And I could feel it. I could feel that exact same feeling I had when I took off down to here. And I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel any of those things that I normally feel when I fly. And I got to think to myself, well, if you're not feeling those things, maybe there's a real good reason. You've been doing this a while. So maybe you shouldn't go. And I sat down and I talked with Tara about it. And said, I'm not comfortable. I'm just not going to do it. And you want to know what? I didn't feel bad about that decision at all. I actually ended up feeling pretty dang good about that decision because I knew it was the right decision. Now, when I removed my ego from it, when I removed, Kip's a really good pilot from it, I went, yeah, Kip is a really good pilot because he's making really good decisions. That's what a really good pilot does.